Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Luffy married with Robin part 1. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video and also share this video with your friends. I have created my other videos playlist, there you can watch my all videos easily, check out as well. Let's start this video. Luffy. The horrified and despairing scream tore from Robin's throat and silenced the battlefield as all eyes turned towards where the archaeologist was standing with her captain and husband. After Enies Lobby and Water 7, the two of them couldn't deny how attracted they were to each other anymore and dated for nearly a month as they sailed back to Alabasta to help Vivi with a rebellion problem. When Robin had been nearly killed by a rebel with a sea stone blade attacking while she was busy saving a little boy, Luffy had gone berserk. He had kicked the ass of every member of the rebellion single-handedly and unlocked something called Haki in the process as he nearly killed the one who stabbed Robin. Robin woke up to Luffy cradling her and holding her protectively, begging her to wake up, and Robin had made a dry, half-hearted remark about how he was acting like a worried husband. For the first time ever, the rest of the crew saw stoic, near unshakable Nico Robin jaw drop and blush brightly when Luffy proposed to her right then and there. He had kept a ring with a diamond on it he had found in one of the sunken ships, and he had the happiest smile any of them had ever seen when she had regained her wits enough to kiss him with a murmured, "Of course, my dear captain." The two had been married right there in Alabasta by the king himself, with the whole kingdom cheering for them as they said their vows and placed simple but sturdy golden bands on each other's fingers. Of course, the rest of the crew avoided the ship for a week as the newlyweds celebrated their honeymoon before they went towards the next island. When they were attacked by Kuma, the couple had just gotten shocking news but had managed to hold on to each other as they rocketed towards Amazon Lily. Despite knowing full well that he was married, somehow Luffy managed to get Hancock to fall in love with him despite him only having eyes for Robin. "Luffy doesn't do this. You promised. You swore you'd never let me be alone again." Robin begged her husband, who had taken a Haki and sea stone infused blade across his stomach from one Marine Vice Admiral that had been aiming for Robin. To his credit, Luffy had managed to stay standing and fighting enough to knock away everyone within 3 yards of him and his wife. "You won't be alone. There's still the others and our gift," Luffy said, finally collapsing as Robin caught him and gently sank to the icy surface, tears flowing down her cheeks without end as she held him close. The man was smiling as he took off his beloved straw hat and placed it upon her head. Luffy. Ace, who had been separated as he went to save a crewmate, and Garp both screamed as they dashed to the rubber man's side. They weren't the only ones either, as Iva, Jinbei, Boa and several others came rushing over as well, even some Marines like Kobe, Smoker and Hina. "Grandpa Snee, I'd like for you both to meet someone who is more important to me than anything," Luffy said, smiling weakly up at his brother and grandfather who kneeled in the ice next to him with tears in their eyes. "This is Robin. She's my wife and I love her more than anything. More than adventure, more than freedom, more than even my dream," Luffy said, causing everyone who knew the boy to gasp and stare wide-eyed as he smiled up at Robin, whose tears doubled. "She is my everything and I am happy dying to protect her, especially now when she has precious cargo," Luffy said, smiling slightly wider no matter how pained it made him as he gazed up at her with utter adoration and love in his eyes. "I know this is asking a lot, but can you all please grant me one last request?" Luffy asked, looking up at them as they felt tears burn their eyes, although Smoker would never admit it. "What is Straw Hat-kun?" "Hina promises to do her utmost best to grant your request," Hina said, stepping forward just a bit as she felt a tear roll down her cheek. She had tried repeatedly to sink his ship and his crew, and yet seeing him like this now, it didn't feel real. It couldn't be real. "I'm gonna be a dad but won't be there. Can you guys please help Robin and our baby? I don't want them to wonder if they should have been born because of their blood. No one deserves that and I don't want the baby going through that," Luffy requested despite how labored his breathing was as his gaze lowered from Robin's face to her stomach. Everyone there froze for a moment and felt their hearts shatter. Luffy was dying in the arms of his pregnant wife and yet was more worried about the unborn baby than the fact that he was dying. "Robin, I didn't want you thinking this is your fault. It's no, I am your husband and your captain, so I am supposed to protect you more than Nami protects her gold," Luffy said, making Robin choke out a sobbing laugh. "And you little one, Daddy. Daddy is sorry that he couldn't be there, but Daddy loves you and Mommy so much," Luffy nearly whispered to his wife's stomach, speaking to the baby inside as if it could hear him. "Everyone, sorry." Luffy never finished the sentence, falling limp right near the end with a smile on his face. "No. No, Luffy, please. Wake up, wake up," Robin begged as she broke down into sobs, begging him to just wake up. Everyone bowed their heads in respect or grief as several of them began to cry. "The son of dragon is finally dead, but now we have to eradicate his spawn before it can taint the world," Akainu said, smirking as he strode over arrogantly, the other two admirals bowing their heads in respect for the fallen captain and Mott moving from where they had been. "You'll have to go through me, brat. Garp sneered, standing protectively in front of his daughter-in-law, who froze at the man's words as she gently laid Luffy on the cold hard ice while the others formed a protective ring around her. Oh, don't be ridiculous. The son of dragon should have never been allowed to live. Much less produce another hellspin in the Emerg. The vice admiral that was speaking was cut off by a black arm sprouting from his back and grasping his throat. Armament hockey. Smoker looked surprised as he and the rest turned to look at Robin, who was trembling as she stood up, her head bowed and eyes shadowed by the straw hat her husband had been famous for. First you take my husband from me soon after we learn about the baby. On the way, Robin began, her voice low and dangerous as she lifted her head to show murderous, completely black eyes that had twin rivers of tears flowing down as she glared hatefully at the vice admiral that had spoken. And now you want to kill my baby too? The only thing I have left of my husband. Just because of one man that my husband never even knew of until recently? Robin asked, her voice laced with venom as she kept her hands over her stomach protectively, not in her usual pose for her powers. It's a devil child. Snap. The marine captain that had been speaking fell to the ground dead of a broken neck due to an arm on his chest snapping it. No, you seem to forget Luffy might be the son of dragon, but here Robin's head snapped up as she roared. Black arms sprouting from all surfaces and strangling or snapping the necks of all those not surrounding her protectively. Pirate or marine, she didn't care. Nothing mattered anymore except the baby within her stomach. A wave of conqueror's hockey and an impossible amount of flower petals obscuring everything was the last thing anyone saw as Robin's fruit awakened and bloomed. The age-old question of how the world ends was finally answered, but it wasn't by fire or ice. I am the devil's child. And this world will burn in the hell that is my home. Ultimate Hana technique. Wilting world. Ugh. I'm alive. Luffy asked more than said as he came to and sat up, looking around confused at the completely black space he was in. Next to him, looking to be sound asleep, was his beloved wife, who began stirring as soon as Luffy moved. Go back to sleep, Luffy. Robin snapped awake after her brain processed who was right beside her. In an instant she was up and staring at her husband in shocked disbelief and yet also happiness. What? But how? Robin asked, staring at him. He didn't even look like he had been injured. He looked just as he had while they were infiltrating Impel Down. I don't know, but are you alright? Luffy quickly discarded any concern over his own health as his eyes checked the older woman over for injuries, his hand coming to rest protectively over her stomach. I'm fine, dear. The last thing I remember is some marine saying that our baby shouldn't be allowed to be born. Robin said, her hands clenched into fists as she and Luffy both unleashed waves of conqueror's hockey at the thought of someone hurting their baby. I lost it. I don't remember anything other than screaming that the baby isn't the devil's child. That I am, and then using my devil fruit. Robin was confused about that part. Her devil fruit was considered a vanilla type like Luffy. Not very dangerous, and yet she had done something. You destroyed the world. A new voice stated as a figure appeared near them with a grin, causing Luffy to stand protectively in front of Robin, who was on alert as well. I ain't here to hurt ya. The man who both Luffy and Robin recognized with a start as Gold. Roger said, holding his hands up to show that he meant no harm. What do you mean I destroyed the world? My devil fruit is the bloom fruit. Robin said, looking confused even though she remained on high alert. Simple, your fruit was given the wrong name. True, it lets you bloom body parts anywhere nearby, however that's not all it does. It allows you to bloom just about anything you can think of, as long as you know how it works and how it's supposed to look. Roger explained, making Robin frown confused. So it's a mystery power. Luffy said, making Roger and Robin both look at him before Roger laughed. Actually, you're not wrong. No one knows the full extent of the devil fruit. You could bloom a sword made from solid stone just by touching a rock, you could bloom gold from the ground, you could make flowers bloom by touching them. The possibilities and limitations are endless and unknown. Roger said, causing Robin and Luffy to look at each other. We're never telling Nami about this. They said in complete harmony, making Roger snort slightly. You're a navigator. She reminds me of Shaki, only stingier. Roger said, grinning and making the two look at him before he got back on topic. But anyways, your power isn't just blooming things. Flowers grow, bloom, and then they. Roger trailed off, expecting them to answer. Wilt. Robin said softly, making him snap and point at her. Bingo. Your devil fruit should really be called something more like the life cycle fruit. It gives you the ability to grow things incredibly quickly or slowly, stopping growth completely even, allows you to bloom things as you already know, and gives you the power to make things wilt and even die. Roger explained, making Robin and Luffy stare in disbelief. But since it was never known that the fruit's wielders could do something like it was classed as a low-tier power. Many think it's useless when really it's one of the most dangerous devil fruits in the world. Or well, it was and will be again. Roger said, smirking a bit. See, little lady, what you did when you lost control was access not only your conqueror's hockey, but also your strongest and deadliest technique with the fruit. Wilting world. You destroyed the entire world when they killed your husband and threatened your baby. Honestly, I don't blame you. Despite him hating the fact that I'm his father, I've been watching over Ace and I love him. I kept his existence a secret from all but Garp because I knew Garp wouldn't care that I'm his father. I would have done pretty much the same thing you had if this had happened concerning him. Destroy the world to keep him safe. Roger said solemnly, a look that didn't really fit his face, as he stared at Robin. If I had heard someone plotting to kill the baby I would have gone completely nuts. Luffy agreed as he smiled at his wife. See, but since the cycle is still continuing you actually managed to bloom another time stream. Everything in it is the exact same, or close to it, to your world, except in this one you two wouldn't have gotten together unless something drastic happened. Now gather around kiddies and let Uncle Roger tell you how things are going to happen. Roger said, returning to his wide grin that actually made him look a lot like Luffy. The couple looked shocked and horrified at the thought of not being together. They loved each other too much. Here's how things are gonna go. You two will be bloomed into this time stream a year before Rubber Boy here starts his journey as a pirate. Nothing will happen to your memories or current skills, and nothing will happen to the baby either. Your body will automatically stop the child's growth as soon as you're in the new world. When you meet up with each other again, you both can pretty much do whatever you want. Marry each other again, resume the growth of the baby, have a happy family as you adventure around, or you could keep the growth of the child paused until you think you're ready. Keep things exactly the same as it was in your world, minus your death and whole destroying the world thing of course, or you can have more fun by screwing everything up and switching it around. Up to you. Roger shrugged at the end while Luffy and Robin looked at each other and then looked at the river that was behind Roger. Obviously it was the time stream. We're getting married again and definitely having this baby as soon as we're ready for it. Luffy said, earning a smile and nod from Robin who leaned against him a bit, one hand over her stomach. Agreed. How shall we meet up? At Whiskey Peaker earlier. I know you were at Baratie to recruit Sanji since I was having lunch there when you showed up. Robin asked, looking at her husband who grinned at her and rubbed his nose against hers. How about it, Baratie? I don't want to spend any more time than necessary away from you. Luffy asked, making Robin smile and kiss his cheek. Baratie it is. I'll be sure to send you a letter or a call on the snail every chance I get before then and make sure that I train on the growing and wilting part of my powers. Robin said, making Luffy grin. And I'll try anything I can. Gramps is supposed to show up on the island about 10 months before I leave for my journey, so I can probably get him to train me in this hockey thing and with some other techniques that can help us. Maybe I'll learn how to use a dagger or something too. That way any threats to you and the baby are taken care of permanently. Luffy said, his smile turned twisted and dark at the thought of any threats to his wife and child. And I'll keep my assassin skills sharp as well. Robin agreed, loving the look of darkness and protectiveness on her husband's face. He may have tried not to kill if he could help it, but he wasn't taking any chances with her and the baby. Spoken like true parents. Ready to kill anyone or anything to protect your daughter. Roger said, snickering and feeling a tiny shiver of fear at the looks on their faces. It was dark and twisted and made even him scared of messing with the two before their eyes widened. Daughter? Robin asked wide-eyed, not knowing what gender her child would be until it was time to give birth, making the news now a surprise, a pleasant one at least. Hey there, princess. Daddy's going to spoil you rotten and don't worry. He won't let any nasty little boys get near you. Luffy said, grinning as he kneeled down and spoke to Robin's belly. Roger laughed loudly at that while Robin looked at her husband fondly amused. Honestly, dear. At least wait until I'm far enough along for the child to hear you. Robin said, amused at her husband's actions while he just grinned at her unrepentantly. Well, you two better go now before you miss your chance. Have fun and try to keep me entertained, yeah? This whole being dead and watching over the world things gets kinda boring really without some chaos and entertainment. Roger said, waving them towards the river and making Luffy grin. Robin gave a small giggle while Roger bursted out into loud laughter at Luffy's next comments. Will do and don't worry. This time you get to watch as I become the king of pirates, Robin becomes the queen, and my baby girl becomes the pirate princess. It had been 2 months since Luffy and Robin went to the past in this new world and they exchanged letters at least once a month since Robin was still with Baroque Works at the moment. Luffy had spent a whole month in the forest alone, testing out his cool new hockey ability and some other tricks he could do with his devil fruit. Of course, the Luffy and Robin of this world were replaced by the married couple, leaving Luffy with several new scars and Robin using all of her acting ability to mask the softness in her eyes that had appeared after a while on the Straw Hat crew. Aiden nearly had a heart attack when one of her newer bandits, some guy named Gal from another island, sneered and told Luffy that being made of rubber was useless, and Luffy proved him wrong by stealing the guy's gun and shooting himself in the head with a grin on his face. Of course they've also exposed some of his new scars to the woman and brushed them off as nothing major, even the slash mark over his stomach and the burnt X over his those scars, and then beat the shit out of Gal, quite literally mind you, for calling Luffy useless. The woman might be a bandit and act like she didn't care about the boy himself, but everyone knew that Luffy was her brat just like Ace is, and like Sabo was. Even Makino admitted that she was more of a Nisan to Luffy, while Dayton was his Kasan, or foster mother really, but same thing. To Luffy she was the only Kasan he knew, and that was all that mattered. Right now Luffy was in a fight against 10-man pirates apparently with small bounties, and was kicking all their asses on his own easily. This hadn't happened in his world but he didn't care. These punks weren't all that powerful, even Dayton or Buggy could take them out with ease. Dayton, her bandits, Makino, the mayor, pretty much the whole town was watching with either dropped jaws or laughing as Luffy beat them up with his hands in his pockets. Heck, the only reason why the bandits hadn't taken out this group was because Luffy called dibs on them being his warm-up exercise. Oops, put a bit too much power in that one. Luffy said, wincing when a kick to one poor swordsman's head splattered the guy's brain matter on the ground. The civilians and other pirates looked shocked or horrified that the bandits were hooting, and Dayton was yelling at her brat to pay more attention to the guy behind him than the corpse. Luffy? Garp roared as the marine ship approached, and he jumped off. He paused when he saw Luffy in the fight, if it could be called that anymore, and winning effortlessly. Oh Gigi. Just give me a second. Almost done with my warm-up. Luffy said, grinning at his grandpa happily while the marines behind the man looked shocked and sick in a few cases. There were already 3 dead bodies, one guy with his head turned to mush, one with his chest caved in, and the other had been kicked clean in half. Sword 3 o'clock. Dayton yelled a warning, but it wasn't needed. Luffy already sensed him coming and had kicked the guy into the side of the marine ship halfway through his mom's warning. Okay, 4 dead bodies. That guy busted his head open and left a blood smear on the side of the ship. Man, you guys are so weak. I've faced ducks tougher than this. Luffy complained as he took out the second to last person with a casual non-hockey covered foot to the leg which shattered the guy's leg bone in 3 places. You little brat. You're dead. I'm gonna kill you first. Then that old harlot of a band, the captain of the pirates, began threatening angrily, only to freeze when Luffy glared at him dangerously. Dayton may be a bandit, but she's my Kasan, and no one threatens or insults her. Luffy growled as he took one fist out of his pocket and advanced on the trembling pirate. Dayton had begun standing at the pirate's insult, but froze at the look on Luffy's face and sat back down with a small smile, hidden behind a bottle, at hearing Luffy call her his Kasan. That brat. Gum here. Garp's eyes widened as Luffy's hand turned a shiny steel like black. Black bullet. Luffy snarled as he slammed his fist into the pirate's ribsage and hit him with enough force to blast his heart, lungs, spine and ribs clear out of his back in a very messy and brutal spray of blood and bones. That had been one of Robin's darker suggestions on an attack, for those that they wanted dead, like say the vice admiral that had killed Luffy in the other world. Most of the civilians fainted or threw up at the action, a few marines threw up or passed out. Garp was gaping in shock and disbelief, while the bandits were hooting and cheering for the blood and gore. Bit messy there, brat. Dayton said with a snort as Luffy casually wiped the blood off of his knuckles with a shirt of one of the knocked out pirates. Of the original 10 pirates, 4 of them had died due to Luffy using too much force by accident, 5 of them were simply knocked unconscious once Luffy reeled in his monster strength. The captain of the pirates. Well, that wasn't an accidental death. No, Luffy did that on purpose. No one threatens or insults you, Dayton Ka. Luffy said, grinning at the bandit as he bounced over to land on her lap and steal a swallow of her sake. He was a pirate and his crew had parties for every occasion possible, and sometimes just because. He could hold his liquor well, not that they knew that. Boy. Get off of me, and you aren't old enough to drink this yet. Dayton said, trying to toss the grinning teen off of her and making him pout a bit as he latched onto her. Wahahaha. You're going to be a strong marine, Luffy. Garp said, laughing and making a note to talk to his grandson later about the use of hockey. Luffy looked up from where he had latched onto Dad's back like a cola and tilted his head. Why would I want to be a marine? Those guys are really weak. See, they can't even handle looking at a dead body, and I bet they couldn't beat a single tiger. Luffy said, pointing at the marines behind Garp who looked sick or were trying to rouse their fainted comrades. Garp turned and growled at the marines. You brats are an embarrassment. How do you expect to be a marine without seeing dead bodies? Garp ranted as he chased the wimps back up onto the boat. Well, how about you come to HQ with me and meet some strong marines then? That'll show you how much better a marine is than a pirate. Garp said, turning back to Luffy who looked surprised. This wasn't part of his plan to get training, but he could make it work. Can we have meat and do lots of training? I'll be stronger than any marine. Luffy asked Dayton to look at him weirdly for agreeing to this. He never seemed interested before. Wahaha. Of course we can. That's my grandson. Striving to be the best and finally seeing that marines are stronger. Garp only paid attention to part of that while grabbing Luffy, who was hugging Dayton goodbye, much to the woman's fake hatred of the affection. Luffy was shocked at Garp's next words as the old man carried his grandson up onto the boat before he could change his mind. He had to send this information to Robin as soon as he could. "Let's go, Luffy. We'll go meet your Bachan for a while and get started on training. Tsuru will be happy to see you again. She hasn't seen you since you were a baby." Robin was staring at the letter that the carrier pigeon had just given her, rereading it for the 4th time since she got it. It had been 11 months since they traveled to the new time stream, and that meant that in another month Luffy would be starting his journey. She was on her turtle riding towards the meeting place with Crocodile and reading the letter while pretending not to notice Vivi following her. "My dear Flower, hey Flower. Miss you so much right now, and if I weren't surrounded by Marines I'd borrow a dent and call you up. I miss your beautiful voice so much, my Flower. These guys all want to hear the voice of my beautiful girlfriend that I always talk about. I can't help it that I'm the luckiest bastard in the world for having you in my life, but I didn't want to have to kill them for making pervy remarks about you, so yeah. We're still going to meet at the restaurant in about 2 months, right? I hope so. I can't wait to see you again. This last near year without seeing you has been hell, and that's not even counting the training Gigi and Bachan have put me through. Oh yeah, speaking of Bachan, I can't tell if I just did something stupid or incredibly smart. See, she has been giving me lessons about the most wanted criminals and you came up. I put in an argument about how in the world it was possible for an 8-year-old child with what they classify a non-destructive low-tier devil fruit to take out 10 marine battleships on her own and then escape without a scratch. Then I tossed out the rumors and some facts about the corrupt marines around at the moment. Well, now Bachan plans on sailing around with me for a while. We'll be classified as concerned citizens while she's with us BTW to investigate these rumors and probably meet you, since I can't stop talking about the most amazing woman in the world. That's you, by the way, in case you didn't get the hint. So yeah, that happened, but hey, I got much stronger and smarter. I can even read and do basic navigation now. Oh, did I tell you that when I use my rubber powers with my hockey I catch on fire? It's awesome, and I'm naming one attack Red Hawk cause it was inspired by Ace, and it sounds awesome. I'll show you when we get attacked after meeting up. Can you imagine Arlong's face if I completely trashed him with a flaming fist? Love you, my Flower, and see you soon. Forever your rubbery idiot, Luffy. Only you, goofball. Robin finally breathed out as she smiled slightly at the letter, only idly noticing as she reached her destination. Truly only Luffy could pull something like this off. What is that, Miss All Sunday? Crocodile asked as he noticed Robin approaching with a small smile that was quickly wiped off of her face as she folded the letter carefully and placed it in a hidden pocket of her uniform. Nothing important, just a letter from a contact. Robin lied easily as she resisted the urge to snap the man's neck where he stood. She had been discreetly training her armament and observation hockey, and with her powers and the element of surprise on her side, she could kill him in seconds. The only reason she hadn't yet was so that her beloved husband could save Alabasta again, where they would get married again, and because he had helped her and Luffy when they went to save Ace. Anything of note? Crocodile asked, staring at her coldly. It seems a Marine Vice Admiral plans on being in the East Blue for some time for unknown reasons. They couldn't get much more information without being caught. Robin told the half-truth as easily as she breathed. Lying, killing, stealing, they all came easily to the woman who had to learn them or die since she was 8. HMPH. Not very important, but let me know if you get more information. Crocodile ordered, making Robin give a small nod of understanding. Shall I head to East Blue to scout out the situation? If a vice admiral is heading to the weakest sea, Robin trailed off, letting his mind bring up the implications. Then something big must be going on. Fine. Head there to check it out and find out what you can about these rumors of someone having discovered my identity as well. This might be connected somehow. Crocodile ordered Robin to give a small smile as she turned to walk away. I should be back in about 2 or 3 months. I'll send in anything important that I find out by mail, since a Den Mushi would be out of place in that sea. Robin called back over her shoulder as she began heading back towards her turtle. TCH. Whatever. Remember what position you're in, Nico. Robin. Crocodile said to the woman's back, making her stop, not turning to face him as her smile grew a bit wider. I know what position I am in very well, Crocodile. Robin said, turning her head just enough to look at him out of the corner of one eye. Crocodile scowled at her, she looked amused. Damn it. I don't see what you find so funny about this. Crocodile said, growling a bit while Robin just looked more amused at his tough guy act. He thought that being a Loja made him so big and bad throw water on him, and he was just another man. And Robin specialized in killing men like him without ever being caught. I just find it amusing that you think I don't know my position. I know where I stand very well. Robin said before climbing on board her turtle and turning to ride away. She waited until she was miles away from him before her smile turned into a vicious smirk as she held me hand over her stomach. 5 levels above you at the least and able to kill you should you try anything against me, my husband, or my daughter. Robin finally spoke to herself as she set her way towards the Easy Blue and the restaurant where she'd meet up with her husband. She couldn't wait to meet up with him again and watch him beat the crap out of Crocodile. And that's if my overprotective husband doesn't beat you to it first, Sandman. HMPH. I can see what you mean about the corrupt Marines. Brats forget what the Marines stand for. Tsuru said, relaxing as her grandson, unnecessarily, helped her up to the floating restaurant. This was after Luffy had completely trashed Full Body for attempting to blow them out of the water despite Tsuru being on board and there being no flag in sight. For the last 2 months Luffy had been sailing with his grandmother to gather Zoro and Usopp and showed her the corruption of the Marines in the East Sea, as well as how badly the Marines screwed up Kuro's death. Right now the old woman was ticked at how far the Marines had fallen and wrote down everything that happened for reports to Sengoku and Garp. Of course Luffy and his crew couldn't be called pirates while traveling with her, so now there were a bunch of people praising the concerned citizens under the command of Straw Hat Luffy. Shahehe. These aren't even the worst rumors I've heard of either, Bachan. Luffy laughed as he led the way into the restaurant, his crew and grandmother close behind, with Nami coming in last. She was only a temporary crew member until they could defeat Arlong for her again, and Luffy couldn't wait. That'd be his first fight after meeting up with Robin in this world, and he wanted to show her that Red Hawk trick he came up with. Hello, how may I help you? The waiter at the front asked, looking at the crew, while nearby Full Body broke into a cold sweat at the sight of the Vice Admiral amongst the group he just tried to blow out of the water. I'm here to meet with someone. Luffy said, causing the others to look at his back confused before Tsuru smirked. Finally going to introduce me to your girlfriend Brat? Tsuru asked, making Luffy blush a bit but laughing and nodding. I see you're having fun with your grandmother, dear. A woman spoke from nearby, causing everyone to look up as Nico Robin, wearing her Baroque works outfit, walked over to them calmly from where she had been sitting in a booth near the door. Devil's Child Nico Tsuru began, her eyes narrowing at the sight of the woman, recognizing her from her bounty poster, but being cut off quickly. Robin. It's so good to see you. You won't believe how much I've missed you. Luffy said, cutting off his grandmother with a wide beaming grin as he dashed forward and picked Robin up with a hug and spun her around. Luffy. I've missed you too, but put me down. If you keep spinning me around I'm going to get sick. Robin said, laughing a bit and making Luffy set her down and fret a bit. Robin quickly quieted his fretting with a chaste kiss on the lips. Brat. Your girlfriend is Nico Devil's Child Robin? Tsuru asked sharply, making those who kept up with the wanted posters nearby to gasp or look shocked. Yep. Robin, this is my grandmother, Tsuru. Bachan, this is my girlfriend Robin. Luffy said, doing introductions before remembering that Robin wouldn't know of the crew had she not been from the other world, and they didn't know her at all, thanks to not being from the other timeline. The others are Nami, she's the one with orange hair, Zoro, he's the green-headed one with the swords, and Usopp, he has the long nose and slingshot. The other 2 are some swordsman bounty hunters Zoro knows named Johnny and Yasaku. Everyone, this is Robin, she's the most precious person in the world to me. Luffy said, grinning widely as he said that, making Robin blush a bit while some of the women nearby cooed at the romantic thing to say. Dear, you do remember that I have a bounty on my head, don't you? Robin asked, looking at Johnny and Yasaku with her body relaxed, but she was ready to use her power if she had to. Don't worry, they won't attack you, and if they try it, I'll kick their asses. Luffy said with an unconcerned grin, although when he looked at the 2 bounty hunters, his eyes were cold and hard. The message was clear, if they attacked Robin he'd kill them. They might not, but for a wanted person as dangerous as her to appear in full view of a Marine lieutenant and vice admiral is foolhardy. I ought to have my men put a bullet in her head right now. Full Body threatened from where he was sitting with his date. You can try, but I'll just take the bullet for her and they don't work on me. Luffy said, unconcerned as his grin widened to near maniacal proportions. The bullet works on everyone equally, Kai, a Marine nearby said, rolling his eyes at the arrogance, while Luffy took the opportunity to steal the man's gun. Looking around, Luffy grinned widely as he saw all attention on him and held the gun to his head, much to everyone's alarm. You know I hate it when you do something like this. Robin said, sighing at her husband's antics and stubbornly looking away. She knew he was immune to normal bullets, which was all that anyone in the East Blue used, but seeing the man she loved more than anything in the world pointing a gun to his own head with a grin on his face. Not fun and not good for her sanity. Shahehe. Sorry, Robin. Luffy said, pulling the trigger and causing everyone to gasp or scream when the bullet hit his head at point-blank range and then bounced right back into the gun, destroying it. I swear you take another year off of my life each time I see you do that, Brat. Tsuru said as she tried to calm her racing heart while Robin was obviously of the same opinion. Sorry, Bachan. Luffy said. His tone was genuine, although he didn't look sorry in the least. He was grinning too widely, as a few people fainted and stared at him in disbelief and shock. "How can you do that?" one woman asked, wide-eyed and pale at what he had done, while Luffy grinned even wider, showing his famous D-grin as it was called. "I ate the gum fruit. I'm a rubber man," Luffy said, grabbing his cheeks and stretching them farther than any normal person could. Robin sighed in fondness as she looked around and saw quite a few of the still conscious women blushing slightly at what he had said. Oh, she knew about his powers and all of their uses quite well. She was pretty sure his gum powers were partially responsible for her getting pregnant so soon after they had been married back in the other time stream. "Careful, dear. You go around telling other women something like that might make them try and take you from me, and I don't share." Robin said. Her eyes were cold and hard as she glared down at the other women in the restaurant, even Nami, who had blushed as well. "Oh, I'm sure I can take him from you," one woman said with a particularly smug and lecherous smile on her face, until Robin turned to glare solely at her and crossed her arms with a dark smile on her face. "Whoa, easy there, Robin. You know I'm loyal to you and love only you. No need to snap her neck," Luffy said, hurriedly stopping his wife, who had already grown 2 extra hands out of the woman's body and gripped her throat. "Sorry, dear. Old habits die hard," Robin said, dismissing the phantom arms and relaxing as Luffy wrapped his arm around her waist. "No wonder you have a bounty if snapping necks is a habit," Zoro said, looking at the woman surprised and making her snort rather inelegantly. "I got that bounty when I was 8 years old for surviving a massacre of my home island. I didn't even learn I could snap necks with my powers until I was 12, and some men thought that they could try and rape me," Robin said snidely and made Tsuru frown. So Luffy was right. Robin had been forced into being a criminal. This was definitely something that needed to be brought up at the next meeting. Thanks for watching this video. Part 1 is over. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the playlist that I have created and enjoy. Link is in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.